Thank you all for being here down in the basement of Watt 1 while the exhibition is happening upstairs. Beautiful graduate work, some of which you contributed to the show. So kudos to all of you. We have an awesome day ahead for 605B, and kicking off to the whole school right now at lunchtime, a lecture by Jennifer Bonner of Mall. Jennifer has been to USC before and has been such an amazing champion for the work we've been doing in our comprehensive studio. And she's been doing the same type of work with mass timber that many of you are learning about and aspiring to do in your own projects. And so I think today is going to be a really wonderful opportunity to work through that. Most of you know Jennifer, know who she is. For those of you who don't, Jennifer was a student at Georgia Tech and at the Harvard GSD. Oh, Auburn. Sorry. Oh my gosh. I need to say, sorry. At Auburn. And then I was thinking of Sam Mockbee. Yeah, at Auburn. Doing amazing design build work with Sam Mockbee. Those of you who know that type of work, the Rural Studio, doing work where you're thinking about materials in unusual ways, thinking about ways to build for folks who really need that work done, and students participating in that. So from an early experience in her education, Jennifer's been thinking about really innovative ways to build. And she's taught at the Harvard GSD after spending some time in LA teaching at Woodbury. So she has spent some time in Los Angeles, knows the city. I loved your text when you landed, like happy to be in LA. Like it's so great to have you here because she spent so much time in the city and really thought a lot about architecture in Los Angeles, including her work on an ADU that was permitted by the city so that it could be part of the ADU densification program in the state of California and Los Angeles in particular through LADBS. Jennifer has won so many awards and accolades that it's hard to go through them all. But I encourage you to look at her website and see the type of things she's been doing. But shows all over from exhibitions, various Biennales, Architectural League Prize, like just kind of the list is really phenomenal. And it's well-deserved. The innovation in the work, the ways that she's tried to push architecture in really creative ways and ways that I think are so beautiful. And I hope today that when you see the work, that there's a belief that you can do this type of thing in your studio projects as well. When you start to see the ways you take something like mass timber and look at its profile, look at the ways that it could be used structurally, look at the ways like she did in her house Gables in Atlanta, ways that you might reimagine the single family house and then housing more largely. And then the work she's been doing on taller buildings, multi-unit buildings, office buildings, these types of work, both in mass timber and precast concrete, really beautiful work. She lives in Portland, and she very generously came down to see us today rather than attend a conference where she was going to have an important role speaking in Portland. But she came here to honor her commitment to USC and to the students here. And I'm immensely grateful for her for being here today with us. Jennifer, it's just such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Cool. Does this work? Is it okay? So just ignore this. Does this thing go away? Okay, hey everybody, good to see the teaching faculty again. As Jeffrey said, like last year, I came to give a talk to this same very class. Good to see you, Alvin. And today I know about your kind of program and where you are in the middle of the semester. And so what this talk is meant to do is I'm going to give away a lot of free ideas, not just my own, but others. And it's really a discourse around CLT, blanks, and I'll get into that kind of word and what it means. And I think you should like take lots of notes. I mean, I remember as 25 years ago as a student, much of my ideas came from random lectures that would be kind of appear in the School of Architecture at appointed time. And so I think sometimes these moments are when you start to solidify ideas around your project. So I want to introduce Aryan Kaligi, who's sitting on the second row here. He's a former mall employee. I think he was on one of your last reviews and was a participant in the blank book that I'm going to show. Okay, so here we go. If I can move past the first slide. Oh. Okay, so for today's talk, I'm going to speak about all things mass timber, including House Gables, a single-family residence constructed in Atlanta. This was 2018. Blank House, that's currently underway in Portland. And all of these things kind of led to what I'm calling Blanks, which is a book co-edited with British structural engineer Hanif Kara, that hopefully inspires the discipline and industry to reset and rethink the way we're currently using CLT in projects across the country. So blanks are also translatable to precast blanks, and I'm going to show a concrete project, a 20-story tower in Atlanta. And then this is work that I'm not going to show today, sandwiches. And so much of my work is about collections of objects, representation, massing models, ideas for architecture that are outside the discipline. And then I quickly bring those back to look at a building at the scale of 1:1. I'm going to skip this because I've got a lot to say. Yep, sure. We're going to
going to share the screen. Sorry to interrupt this. I know you brought these to the point with you. Jennifer will be finding copies of for those brought up. And those of you in the studio, if there's not enough time, we can do that as well.
Go ahead. Okay. So before we get into all the CLT stuff, I have to kind of show a series of images, which is work done at Mall over the past 15 years. And this work is in the context of teaching at 3 institutions across the country, LA, Atlanta, and Boston. And so keep in mind that this is how I built my practice, with 1 foot in academia and 1 foot in practice. And this is how many of these projects is how I survived the 2009 recession, was by having a full-time teaching position, but also trying to push and do exciting work. Pushing forward. Oh, here it comes. Okay, so here we are. We're flying 4 drones around House Longa and House Esters to scan Mies van der Rohe's use of brick and these kind of large picture windows. And this is in Krefeld, Germany. So 2 drones weren't enough, and we needed 4 to make it a performance. And performance is very much part of the Mall recipe. I don't know, it's playing, is it? Is it not playing? There we go. These are the rear elevations. They're not houses that are twins. They're on 2 adjacent properties, 2 different clients. But I'm interested here in a brick wall. At that time was load which was structural. Actually, when you peel back all the drawings, there's a lot of steel in the walls to make these really large openings in the brick. And so this comes up later on when you look at how windows are placed inside of CLT, and the kind of freedom that we have when that happens. So we often look to things outside the discipline of architecture, found in pop culture, like sandwiches, picnics, candy shops, and dollhouses. I'm interested in the ordinary, like artificial grass and stucco, and the everyday, like wedding photography or everyday construction techniques, and how all this material can become the starting point for the architectural project. Mall is interested in the project of representation, which I would argue is the only realm for the architect until she builds. It's a driving influence in all of the work. And for me, a representational project is an architectural project. So this is another axon that snaps into view only from the top level of the Hard Rock Cafe parking garage located on the Boston's Rose Kennedy Greenway. And so this is that axonometric view. We have an affinity for fake artificial materials. That look like one thing, but act like something else. And there's also an intentional link to art practice and the works of contemporary artists such as Barbara Kasten. Kasten's use of colored gel photography inspired a project titled Still Life, which became the driving force of an exhibition and publication at Harvard GSD. In my first year of teaching, I was tasked with being the faculty editor for a 400-page book, which ultimately became a demonstration project back to the school, asking students and faculty, how might they start using more color in their work? I know this is hard to imagine, all of you sitting here on the West Coast, that the East Coast doesn't use color, but it's definitely a thing. Other artists like Mary Corse's white light paintings, where she painted with highway reflective beads for works inside the gallery, became Mall's cladding system for a 55-foot-long glowing brick facade in Atlanta. The work is admittedly graphic, and it uses techniques of redaction similar to that of John Baldessari's big circles seen here, and 2 accessory dwelling units for the City of Los Angeles's standard plan program. Lean-to ADU and Big Circle ADU reference all-American lean-to sheds, while also reinterprets 2 Los Angeles architectural mainstays, the stucco box and the exaggerated false front. We draw from bungalows, consistently mixing the low and the high, such as the White House black trend that's very popular on HGTV and pop culture. And then there are 2 ways in which color appears in my work. First, through color blocking, as you see here in House Gables. And then the second is through color gradients and equal doses of syrupy pink and blue. Lastly, I'm drawn to material systems like cross-laminated timber and the way it has the potential to reset the discipline of architecture. Okay, so now diving into some of the context of what you're all doing in studio. In 2020, right, during COVID, I co-taught a studio at Harvard GSD, an option studio with Hanif Kara from London. And we put together an idea about a studio that would be around the CLT blank. This is a letter I wrote Hanif about midway through the studio. And we're really thinking about this material as an industrialized object, right? So you all know the 4x8 sheet of plywood very well here in Los Angeles and know how that shepherded a generation of architecture and experimentation. And now we have the 9-foot by 50-foot blank. After the studio, we produced a book called Speculations on CLT that I'm going to chat through. And really, here's a demonstration of Edgar Rodriguez's project, where in this short GIF, you can see how the blanks can become walls, they can become floor plates, and they can become a large overhang roof. In the studio that Arian was a participant in, we asked students to design 14 single-family houses and 14 towers. So half of this semester was on in person, and then the COVID lockdown happened. So this was a tremendous amount of work by a group of students and here's where the blank comes in. If you look at the towers, you can kind of see the registration. The students kind of took two tactics. Half of the group wanted to deny the reading of the CLT blank, meaning cut it up and kind of arrange it in ways that it can't be seen or easily read. And then half of the group really used the CLT blank as a registering device, like in the structure or in the exoskeleton. And so this brings me to Anna Gogo's project, who won the Templeton Kelly Prize, where she does something really simple. She takes the blank and makes a wiggle cut down the center, and then bandages two CLT panels together. And so she has 300 CLT panels, 400 cuts, and 400 bandages. And she's producing an exoskeleton with these kind of steel belts, kind of tightening or cinching the whole project together. And so very much we're interested in the construction and like the ideas around how to actually make this work. And so I think this is a technique that you're like, technique number one, you can cut CLT into any shape and it has shape, and then you can put surfaces back together in interesting ways. There's no way to move that thing up a little bit more. If it's not bothering anybody else, I can let it go. Is it annoying? So this is the essay that I wrote called Switcheroo Blanks Everywhere. Awesome. Thank you so much. Where I'm really looking to artists like Richard Serra. He actually had a project from 1978 called Blank, where he's using these kind of oil paint sticks in similar proportions, eerily similar proportions to the blank that we were talking about in studio. I also advocate for the kind of performance of the blank on site. They kind of remind me of like dangling earrings when the crane comes out and the blank is kind of being installed. We asked architects who have used mass timber before to make contributions within the book with essays. And then we also asked some architects that have never used the material before, because we think they have something to say in terms of representation or strategies for architecture. This is an essay by Yasmin Vobas, and she talks about the 10 points on the CLT model. And then this is her project at Ultra Modern with Aaron Forrest. And you have to know the context of this. This was built in 2015, a very young academic practice, a very young view on the material. That's 10 years ago. And I want to say that I think this is one of the best and most interesting CLT projects in the whole country. Even though small, it's doing a lot structurally, and when I first saw it, I was like, it looks like me. So I don't see how they're pushing anything, until I started to kind of dive into what is a two-way scanning system, right? Just in its own kind of cross-laminated application. In order to get these distances in these cantilevers, they cross-laminated the blank itself. So they have blanks going like this, and then they put more blanks. So that thickness of the roof is actually 2 blanks thick. So there's another idea. So to double up the blank and sandwich it, or to cross laminate its own material property. It's a good one. So, but they're teamed up with an engineer called Brett Schneider. And I think all architectural ideas, the best ones are when there's a structural idea that's kind of married to the architecture, right? So these columns are, the detailing of the columns is within the thickness of that roof, and the whole roof is actually being hung from the columns. And there was value engineering in this. There was 15,000 screws or hardware at some point, and they valued it down to like 3,000. This is an essay by Sean Canty, who has not built with CLT yet, but you'll know his work at the Venice Biennale last year with plywood. Sean's really interested in curvature in architecture, and he was like, I don't want to do planar surfaces. So along with AKT, they started looking at these kind of structural cassettes that would be a hybrid of both stick frame and CLT pieces. Another essay by a historian of plywood. We found her work at the University of Virginia. Her name's Erin Putalik, and she was looking at the plywood of Los Angeles and Southern California in the time period of the 1930s and the experiment that manufacturers were undertaking. So here she's really interested in the surface of the plywood, the graphic, the wood grain. And then she dug out a female architect from 1941 called Eleanor Raymond, who had never been published. And Eleanor made 2 houses in the Massachusetts area that predates Walter Gropius, which is pretty amazing, that she built these 2 experimental houses with plywood. On the left side, you can see the material unit, 4 by 8 feet, and you can see the cladding system. The legibility of the material unit is on the facade. For a more traditional client on the right side, the client asked Eleanor to cut down the plywood into like shiplap siding boards. Remember, this is New England. And so I just think this is kind of the thesis, which is maybe point number 4. I don't know what point I'm on right now, is that, you know, the idea that it could be the material unit, or you could disguise the material unit and cut things up. Courtney Kaufman made an argument for taking the blank, thinking about it in terms of blankness, and then abstracting the term. And she turns to the work of like Virgil Abloh or Malevich and starts to think about the blank in the kind of level of abstraction. She also references John Baldessari and Jose Davila here from Los Angeles, which is very much about redaction and this kind of blankness obscuring the image or the architecture behind. So point number 5, can you obscure the architecture behind with the kind of blankness of the CLT blank? Very much part of the recipe, the mall recipe, is looking to what contemporary artists are doing in practice and seeing if there's possibilities in that work to drag it back into kind of architecture. This is the work of a LA-based artist Lauren Halsey, who had won the Hammer Prize this year and built this pavilion or sculpture out of gypboard. And inside the gypboard, which is a blank kind of material, she cuts bricks, she cuts messages, she carves imagery into the material. And so just switching out maybe gypboard for the CLT blank, and there's a lot of possibility there. Another SoCal artist is Jennifer Bolande and her plywood curtains. And so thinking about your material as like a trompe-l'oeil, like, is there a way to get a little bit of depth and shadow play in the kind of carving of the CLT blank? And then Ari and I were texting late last night and talking about This is more of Jennifer Bolanday's work. And we found this kind of uncanny connection to this device that Coretta Kent had. I mean, we're working really hard here.
This is awesome.
Like late night, like to take the device that Coretta Kent, I don't know what she did with this. Was this in her teaching or in the gallery or? Okay, so there you go. Y'all see it? Okay. All right, so some of you had the book. If you don't have it, please get it. There's a lot of good ideas in there. And I just want to point to the graphic designer because he's quite amazing. It's Neil Donnelly out of Brooklyn. And Neil listened to us about Hanif and I talked to him on Zoom about CLT. He went away, designed the book, and came back and showed us the concept. And we were like, blown away. So you have to, all the words with the blue arrows, those are drawings that are of the student's work from the studio. And he's turned the typography. And so here are some of the drawings for the tower or like the CLT blank figure ground drawings. And some of the kind of exploded axonometrics of like how to build these things. And then all of that, oops, I've gone too far. And then all of that is interwoven with these essays that I just introduced. And so when you actually turn the book, it's like becomes a cross-laminated situation. So if you look on the spine of the book, you can see all the layers and it reads as the CLT blank does as a tectonic material. Does that make sense? All right, here's a student who also kind of cut up the CLT blank into a kind of siding, a proposal for siding and the cladding. So the blank is in there, but it's been cut and distorted. This is Ariane's project, and you can see that the 50-foot tall blank becomes a registered device for the tectonic of the tower, which are these stacked boxes that have office floor plates on the interior. And then instead of using beams and columns, this student was really looking at the lamination of CLT as a facade surface. And then right where things get kind of tricky with the cantilever, there's more layers and more layers put behind to kind of make that cantilever achievable. And then it becomes kind of cartoonish. Okay, so I'm gonna go in kind of reverse than what I normally do. I taught the studio, did the book, and then started to bring those ideas straight into my practice. And so I'm gonna show House Gables next, but first I'm gonna show Blank House. So House Gables, as I mentioned, was 2018. It's a project where I cut up the blank. So I didn't even have the idea of the blank yet, right? So I was rationalizing geometry. There's 87 panels, they're all different. But you can kind of see, the image of the blank here on the construction site. But here's the blank in Blank House. It's 7 feet wide. It's 30 feet tall in some cases. And then there's an idea about cutting a seam in it and using a crenellated facade. This is some of the blanks kind of coming together for some of the east and west elevations. And here we see the windows kind of getting dropped in. When the blank becomes a surface, remember if you think back to the Mies van der Rohe example, you can actually move these windows around. You don't need a steel header or a steel footer or whatever it is around the window. Imagine the scattering of these windows across the facade. As I mentioned before, a lot of my work has to do with other things in pop culture. These were early models around candy. So you'll see things like Grandma's hard candy or Reese's cups yeah, that's a Reese's cup. This idea of like, can there be an ADU on this property? Gumdrops and of course, candy canes. So yeah, back to the representation in this kind of still life, that there's an idea that the house looks like it's part of a scene from a still life, and that candy is kind of on display. And here's the candy wrapper facade, and the candy inside the house. Not a good idea structurally in seismic zone, so don't write that point down. This is the detailing with KLH out of Austria. In order to get these kind of innies and outies, this is the kind of strategy for bolting things together. The chamfered would be all hidden behind the other layers of the cladding system in the project. You know, I don't think y'all are going to get this detailed, but there's different thicknesses and plies to CLT. This is the interior kind of, like kind of, I don't know, it's like naked blank model. Like I took all the blanks away and then did these like still life, interiors. And then I just want to point out, this was done about 2 summers ago. We put popsicle sticks in the gym area. So just remember that. We'll circle back around. Well, here we are. Okay, so 9 days ago, I listed it on MLS, the design, the lot, the property. And it went viral on Zillow Gone Wild on Reddit. And many of the comments are around popsicle sticks. So they like actually everybody, there's 500 comments and 4,000 upvotes, and everybody kind of got it. So that was good news. This is the ground floor plan, which is 2 bedrooms that kind of come off the candy cane. This is the main floor of the house, and there's an idea that there's a circulation path all around the exterior. It looks like an easy plan because I worked really, really hard to get this plan stabilized. There's a lot more going on than what it might appear as a box. This plan is really about 3 tables, 1, 2, and 3. And then the upper floor is a mezzanine, and it's about 3 leisure spaces. So a sauna, a gym, and a little yoga exterior terrace, all hidden behind the expression of the CLT blank. And then a roof terrace with like a sitting area above. And this is how the slope is really severe, much like many of the leftover parcels here in Los Angeles, greater than 20%. And the idea was like how to stack a kind of 3 stacked layer within kind of the maximum zoning dimensions on site. And here's the blank house sliding down the hill. So, I mean, we're looking at a house, but some of these things can apply to you all. I mean, I'm thinking about surfaces, cuts into the surfaces, double height space, strange proportions. I mean, this is a very narrow space. It's a desk that then becomes a floor. So there's kind of a lot going on there. Or this kind of telescoping spatial effect through the mezzanine level. And then, as mentioned, all of the work always goes through this like representation machine. This is a 1 to 12 scale dollhouse model currently on display in Portland at an interesting show around models. We hired food photographer Dina to come and shoot the project, which is a backdrop of like AI generated Doug fir trees. And these are the incredible images that she kind of made that day in the studio. And then pink is always prevalent in the work. And so we had to kick the Doug fir tree backdrop out and go with something pink. And how are we doing on time? Okay. I'm going to zoom through this. Y'all know what roof typologies are. Y'all know what angles are. This was research that I did in 2015, so 10 years ago, reading roofs in suburban locations across America, but specifically in Atlanta. This is a good one in LA. Front facing gable with a camel backed hip plus a rotated gable bump in the back. And so this became the obsession for House Gables, interested in villas that need like 8 different roof types to cover the floor plan versus something more modest like a shotgun house in Cabbagetown, which is a simple hip roof plus a gable. And this led to a body of work called Domestic Hats. These are really large scale massing models. I won't get into all the ideas around it. But then we took the models back out into the front yards of the actual houses in Atlanta that we had sampled and kind of dropped them off as yard art in the front yards. And we were gunning for Michelle Nunn that year for US Senator. So that became the postcard for the exhibition. So here's House Gables. The idea is to take the foam model and to build the model at 1-to-1 scale. And the way to do that in a kind of most solid, stereotomic way, I guess, would be to make it out of sheets of CLT. There's 6 gables crashing into one another. We are all familiar with things like the free plan, the romp plan. I'm sure we can find those ideas in your projects in studio right now. One suggestion I have on the table is to kind of push those away and really take on or tackle this idea of the roof plan. So can the roof's geometry inflect decision-making and organization-making in the plan? And then what you get in section are things like this, which is called what I call like a roof room. It's being hung by the folded plate of like the larger roof above. This is my favorite view of the house. It's kind of the kid's drawing or picture of the gable. It's nested deep into the project. It's on the 2nd floor. And here's where the structural concept is on full display. Here's the folded plate that I mentioned. That's the 7 roofs kind of crashing together. And then this room is being hung, but then not really, because all of that's being transferred down the CLT guardrail to a steel beam that's in the framing of the 1st floor. So you can really like trace the forces of the structural strategy in the image, which I'm like, okay, that's cool. I mean, that's what I think the Ultra Moderne project does that I showed you in Chicago. When building on tight, narrow lots in Atlanta, this house is only 18 feet wide. I think the promise of the roof plan is that we can have a double height space, and we can have spatial interiors instead of being in kind of flat ceiling conditions. The site plan, just behind here is what's called the Beltline. I don't know if anybody's from Atlanta or knows anything about it. The New York Times wrote an article, "A Glorified Sidewalk and the Path to Transform Atlanta." I thought that wasn't very nice. It's a very exciting project that's driving development, and it cuts through 45 in-town neighborhoods, and Atlantans are walking and being outdoors. This is the construction video of House Gables. There's 4 people on site installing the 87 panels. It took 14 days. All the material is kind of piling up here on the left in a neighbor's property. The walls are 3-ply CLT. The floors are 7-ply, and the roof is 5-ply. So these layers of CLT are distributed in different ways throughout the structure. The product, there was like 4 engineers on the project, Hanif and AKT being one of them. The panels were fabricated in Austria by KLH and shipped over in shipping containers to site. And it was quite the spectacle for a neighborhood in Atlanta to see a house being put together with a crane. I met a lot of friends that week that are still my friends. And yeah, I think y'all have already learned this, so I'll just skip through it. Everybody got this, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
What was cool, or what drove kind of some of the decision making at the time in 2014, as we're kind of planning the project, I'm not 2014, 2016, is that each of these pieces, like 75% of the 3-ply walls required flip milling. So there was no North American manufacturer at the time that would do the flip mill. They would cut it on one side, but not the other. And so that's how we got all these mattered cuts. In Austria, they've been cutting these panels for like 30 years now. And so they were the only ones that could kind of pull it off. For the roof panels, all of them are flip milled. And then the floor panels, obviously none, because we're just cutting them out, right? So this is the way the material arrives on site. It's kind of this virgin spruce that after a day in the sun, it kind of turns yellow fast, but you can always sand it down and get it back to that color. So a reminder that this is a finished product. So we're on a live construction site. It's been picked up with a crane. It's been pulled out of a shipping container. And this is all like 1/8 inch tolerance to like go together, with the crane. So it's a bit stressful. CLT panels are kind of piling up. I'm teaching at the GSD, and kind of flying down to Atlanta every other day to see this thing go together. When you think about these surfaces that you're going to make with CLT panels, it's really about kind of figuring out wall-to-wall joints are best when they're lap joints. And you figure out which side you want the hardware to be on. And then corners, KLH was pushing kind of butt joint at the time, but then talking to another architect in Portland, like the air flow out is better if you use this lap joint corner thing, rabbet joint. And so then we had all these joints in the roof. So this is a roof to wall, interior wall connection, and this is a roof to an exterior wall connection. So you're kind of placing it on top, and then a very long screw is being driven in on site to connect the two panels together. In order to figure out how to put this together, we did 87 drawings, so kind of like an IKEA catalog. And starting with number 1, we want to install this panel first in the very back of the project. So most times architects don't get involved in how the things happen on site. In this case, this drawing set was very important because it's where the engineer started to add their drawings on each of these erection plan diagrams. And so you can see the kind of flicker between not many drawings. Okay, there's one detail wall to wall here versus how it starts to get more intense. And like the drive angle of the screw is being called out. Like none of the angles are the same. It's, lots going on. And it gets more and more complicated. I guess we're not doing good on time, are we? Okay. I'm just going to flip through. Y'all get the point. This is the ordinary happening or showing up. Like this gable is in alignment with that gable, not by design, totally random. This is what the house looks like after all the panels go up. See how like rough and tumble things look. I'd say the dirty secret with CLT is that you actually have a lot of labor in sanding and staining it that nobody talks about. And this is a photograph by Tim Hersley from Arkansas, an architectural photographer who decided to light the house and kind of position the camera or to take this angle, which I'd never seen before, and kind of brought this like Southern Gothic vibe to the project. And then, this is John Portman's Super Atrium projects in downtown Atlanta. So I really like this shot of like maybe, an invention of a typology and like kind of trying to invent a typology. I just can't talk about all this.
No finishing.
Okay, there's a lot of ideas in this house. This has to do with materials and faux finishing. It's just still too long of a story. Yeah, so the interior is all this CLT, right? So there was an idea that to bring materiality, color, and otherness to the project. This is not a Scandinavian house. This is in the middle of Atlanta. It's in the dirty South. And so this is the faux finishes are acting as like a wainscoting, and they're actually they're both graphic and they're also functional, because behind the material, which is I'm treating it kind of like a sticker, are the routing lines for the electrical outlets. So in the kitchen, let's just go to this. It becomes a backsplash on the kitchen, what's this called? Counter. And then it dives down to maybe like 1 foot on the other side of the room to cover the electrical runs. Okay. And then, the idea of kind of scaling this up, is a CLT house affordable? Maybe not. Maybe if we have 10 of them, is there a way to do a copy paste and kind of a small lot urbanism, something similar to like Barbara Bester's Blackbirds here in Los Angeles? Half of the houses could be built with 1 crane, the other houses built with another crane. You could have 10 houses erected in, I don't know, like 20 days. Somebody said like, oh, they've multiplied, because everybody was looking at house gables for so long, and then there's like 10 more with these roofs. This is a project that Arian worked on, actually very much has to do with LA, the 5/1 typology that was invented here by Tim Smith in 1990. This is what we have across America at this moment in time. Arian wrote this, I didn't write it. Which is the critique of the kind of situation we have with the 5/1s. So here's the idea to say type 4, which is the heavy timber, and like 4/none, right? So can we bring timber all the way down to the ground? As you know,
As many of you are
they know what this is. Okay, so type 5 wood frame construction over type 1, which is non-combustible concrete or steel buildings, very much based on code and a developer's kind of matrix. And so the idea here is to take the blank, with 4 blanks, you quickly can have the length of a 200-foot long multifamily housing block. And then there's opportunities to kind of cut geometry and flatness to kind of fur things out to offer a new reading of the 5/1. And this goes back to the essay that I wrote, and this idea that other architects have had, like Diller and Scafidio's Kinney Plywood House in 1981, where again, you can see the registration of the 4x8 sheet on the making of the whole building. And then, for 4/none, is there a way to use the CLT blank as a registered graphic? I don't know. This all applies to precast concrete, same size, same kind of thinking and logic. There's ways to deform precast through form liners, aggregates, textures. Satisfying. Anyways,
Right.
I think that's it. Oh, all that was like CLT, mass timber. We're hoping to bring it inside of this adaptive reuse project in Fort Worth, Texas. This is a former KKK building, auditorium, purpose-built in the 1920s. The client is amazing. We are rehabbing this and turning it into a cultural hub for about 9 different nonprofit organizations. Our client is a coalition. These are my partners, Christian Stainer here in Los Angeles, Jermaine Barnes in Miami, and a 4th partner, Dennis Chiesa in Fort Worth. So maybe check this out. It's coming in months to come. Right now, we're in schematic design phase.